So first of all, I want to congratulate all of you for waking up at an ungodly early time of the day to think about leadership. And I want to welcome you on behalf of the City and County of San Francisco. 4 years ago when I ran for office, there was only one Asian American on our board. She was appointed to fill out the seat of someone who was going to jail. And I say that because times have changed. I think those of you who know San Francisco know that I am blessed to serve with a third of my colleagues who are Asian American, with an Asian American mayor. We help to run a city across the bay from the city of Oakland, which also has an Asian mayor. And you may think it was always like this. But let me tell you, just a few years ago, it wasn't. And I was asked to speak for 7 minutes to impart everything I've learned about leadership since I came to San Francisco a little less than 20 years ago, in my early 20s, just like many of you. So let me start by saying, why are we here? I think all of you have seen the statistics, the number of Asian American CEOs in the top 500, a handful. For those of you who are in the legal field, you know that we have very few federal judges. Here in the Bay Area, we certainly don't have our representation on the bench. And even in politics, despite the gains we've made, we've never elected an Asian American congressperson from this city. In this half of the city, we've never elected anyone to our state legislature. We still have a long ways to go. So why have we been held back? Well, the first thought I think many of us have on this has to do with stereotypes and cultural stereotypes. When I was in high school, the only Asian American male actor that I knew of was from a movie that some of you may be familiar with called 16 Candles. How many of you remember the character, the famous character, Long Duck Dong? For those of you who haven't seen this, just go to YouTube, Google Long Duck Dong, 16 Candles. The stereotype of Asian men in the 1980s. My friends who are in Hollywood, who are from our community, tell us that typically there are only 5 roles that they were asked to interview for and audition for over the years. Any of you heard of the 5 Gs? Gooks, geeks, gangsters, geishas, and kung fu masters. Now, from my perspective, I think stereotypes in part shape who we are, shape how others look at us. But what I want to impart over the next 5 minutes are sort of 5 quick thoughts around leadership that I want you to hopefully think about during the course of this day. First and foremost, I think leadership is about what that Roman philosopher Seneca said, which is how good fortune, how success is really a function of luck and preparation, right? We all know that. Luck is what happens to you. Preparation is what it is that you do. And I say this as someone who became the president of our Board of Supervisors on my very first day at work. That was a little bit of luck, but it was a little bit of preparation, which I'll explain in a moment. The second thing I want you to think about is how leadership is about passion. It's about doing what it is that you love. So from my perspective, about 90% of the workforce goes to job to collect a paycheck. They get a job, it pays the bills, that's what they do it. And my hope is that all of you, every single one of you, will fall into the 10% who do a job because you love it. Because that is how you will succeed, and that is how you will lead. Let me give my own perspective. So when I went to college, I went to school to do what my parents wanted me to do. They only wanted me to achieve in one profession, and what was that? They wanted me to become a doctor, yes. No, they didn't want me to become a lawyer. They wanted me to become a doctor. And I went to all these pre-med classes, and there are lots of folks from our community who are in that class. And I got to share one thing. I see this camera pointing right at me, and I don't like to say this on camera, but I might have hypothetically gotten an F on a midterm my freshman year in math. Hypothetically, Mom. I might have gotten a D- in a physics course my sophomore year, in part because I wasn't passionate about it. But let me tell you what also happened during my first year in college. I went to school on the East Coast, went to school in Boston, and a couple months into my first year, there was a call out for Asian American activists. And I saw a little sign on campus, and I said, I wonder what that's about. We went as a contingent to visit a nearby university where a hate crime had occurred against 8 young college students. Imagine, you're out on a weekend night, you're with 7 of your friends, you're all dressed up because you're going to a formal. You're on a bus, and then all of a sudden, you feel something in the back of your head, you've been spat upon, and you start hearing the racial epithets. This was 1987. So weeks later, the dean of your school, after you have told them who attacked you that evening, said, sorry, we can't do anything, and you put the call out to Asian American students around the area to come and protest the university. I was one of those students. And when I showed up and we met with the administration of that college, and I heard that dean say, you know what, sorry, there's really nothing we can do. For some reason, that jarred me. I started studying civil rights history. I started getting more involved in Asian American issues. And fast forward, it is part of what I am passionate about. It's partially why I moved to San Francisco. Let me ask for a show of hands. How many of you did not go to high school or did not grow up here in this city? Wow. The reason I ask that is I'm always astounded at how many Asian Americans have come to the Bay Area, have come to San Francisco because we are a city, we are a region that is a beacon to the rest of the world of what opportunity stands for. Which leads me to my second point, or my third, actually, principle of sort of thinking about leadership. And that is, as you think about how you move in your careers, relish failure. This is a good thing. Now, for me, failure started early. Mom, I'm sort of projecting my mother into this camera, so pardon me here. Failure started with a couple of bad grades in pre-med courses. But for me, I think that if you don't think about your career as one in which you take risks and potentially consider the fact that you might fall down, you're never going to get as far as you want to get, particularly when it comes to leadership. Let me ask another question, audience participation. How many of you snowboard? Got some snowboarders? Okay. Snowboarding, as you know, is like any sport, not that easy to pick up. But what most snowboarders will tell you is the moment at which you figure out how to do it is when you learn how to push that risk such that you might fail. And what do I mean by that? When you get on a snowboard, if you want to turn, if you want to move around the mountain, you've got to get on an edge. And you have to get on an edge just far enough so that you can move, but not so far enough so you fall over. Now, how do you learn where that balance is? You actually have to fall down a couple times. You literally have to ride that edge until you push it a little too far and you fall. And then you do it again. You push it till you fall, and then you realize where that edge is until you don't fall.